Welcome back to this series of the Meeting of Minds podcast, this mini series called the HSP Connection, with me, Philippa Robinson.
And me, Robbie Lee. In this series, we're looking at all things HSP, from our own personal experiences of discovering we have the trait, to figuring out what we need to thrive, and to working in our businesses as HSP coaches. The series really has something for everyone, because what's good for HSPs really is good for all. If you want to know more about what it means to be an HSP, then have a look at the very first podcast in the series, episode 90 of the Meeting of Minds podcast, and we explain all about it. So let's talk about today's episode. What are we talking about today, Philippa?
Well, today we are talking about navigating relationships with non-HSPs.
Oh, juicy topic. Yes.
Very juicy. So my husband is not an HSP. And we're not just talking about married couple. It can be friendships, family. Yes, it can be our loved ones, anybody, our children, anybody. I think one of my children is probably an HSP. I think it's a little bit early yet, but I think one of them is an HSP. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. And just before we start, I just like to say that I'm really excited because we had a message from a listener on Spotify. So if you listen on Spotify, I think it comes up when you click on the actual episode details, and at the bottom of the show notes, I think that's where it is, there is a question and it says, what do you think about this episode? And you can actually answer that question. You can click on the button, answer it, and we get that message. Yeah, exactly. And we've had a message, which is amazing. Because when we say we'd like to hear from you, we really mean that we would like to hear.
We mean it.
We do. And unfortunately, the Spotify doesn't allow us to answer that message, but I just wanted to let the lovely person who sent us that message to know that we got it. Thank you. We really appreciate it. And that message, I'd just like to sort of, says that, the person who wrote the message said they thought the episode, which they were talking about episode 90, the first one in this mini series, they thought it was a great introduction to the subject of high sensitivity. And they said they couldn't wait to hear the other episodes in the series. And also, if you're an HSP or an empath, you'll definitely love this episode. And, that's amazing. So thank you for that comment. And we too hope you're going to love these next episodes in this series.
Yes.
Yeah. Anybody else who'd like to send us a message, you can do that through Spotify. If you listen somewhere else, in the show notes, there will be a link to the Meeting of Minds email, or you could go to my website, safeandsupported.co.uk, or you could go to Robbie's, which is robbielee.com, and
or YouTube, right? If they're watching on YouTube,
if you're watching on YouTube, you can send us a message. I think you're supposed to go down below. You can send us a message. But on our websites, you'll find contact buttons and send us there. Or you can find us on social media. We're both on LinkedIn to varying degrees and various times, but we're both on LinkedIn. We're both on Instagram. Please go and find us and send us a message. We would love to hear from you. So, navigating relationships with HSPs. I'm really excited because I made a list.
Woohoo!
Robbie has kept us on track for the last few weeks, and I thought it was about time that I did that, and I made a list of a few things. And just before we started recording, we had a little chat, and I've added a couple of Robbie's things in there, but actually we largely had come up with the
same things.
Anyway, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So where are we going to start? Well, I would like to start, if that's okay, with something that it doesn't actually just relate to navigating relationships with non-HSPs. It relates to everything we've talked about so far and everything we're going to talk about in the rest of this series. It's actually about believing that high sensitivity, sensory processing sensitivity, which is where it comes from, that's sort of the medical type recognized term, So
Yep.
be it that, you know, if you know you have this trait, you might identify as a highly sensitive person, or highly sensitive, or high sensory intelligence, if you know any of Willow McIntosh's work. But it what I want to say is believe that it is a thing. Really believe, because I mean, it is. Robbie and I would not be here talking about it unless we believed that it was a thing. And that's not to say because we say it, you've got to believe it. But for me, believing it and really taking it in, you know, to my heart and understanding it has helped me understand myself and helped me get to this stage where I am thriving with my high sensitivity and with my gift, and, you know, generally trying to shine with it all. You know, that's definitely where I am, but that had to come from my belief that it was something real, and for me to understand.
Yes.
What do
Oh, yes.
you
Absolutely. Beautifully said. Because until we own it ourselves, then it's hard to kind of be in real bring that into a relationship, conversations about it in relationship with somebody else, or even our own awareness. Because we'll talk about kind of how this relates in relationships. But I totally agree with you. The first part is recognizing, oh, this is a real thing. This is a this is a real part of who I am, how I navigate the world, and it affects how I navigate the world and what I need. So I totally agree. Couldn't agree
yeah
more.
yeah and it's funny because my 14-year-old said to me, and just the other day, he said, oh, this HSP thing, come on, admit it, it's a bit of nonsense, isn't it? And I said, absolutely. I mean, you know, out of the mouths of like, yeah. I said,
Ooh.
I know, yeah, exactly. But I said, no, I absolutely. He said, really? Do you think it's a thing? I said, I absolutely do think it's a thing. And I said to him, so you're dyslexic, love. Do you think that your dyslexia is a thing?
It's a thing. Yeah.
He said, yeah. I said, well, my high sensitivity is a thing. And it
Nice.
helps me understand who I am, helps me understand what I need, helps me understand how
Yeah.
to navigate my way,
Yeah.
you know, in life. Just like
Yes.
you, only quite recently realizing that you're dyslexic has really helped you understand, you know, your experience of the world much more. And he's
Yeah.
like, okay, like, you know, as teenagers do. Okay, well, right. And that was the end of the conversation. But it was really interesting when he said, is it a thing? And I was, yes, of course it is. Of course it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, believe it, because it's you kind of need to be have it settled in you before
Yeah.
you can bring it into your relationship with other people.
Hmm. I
Uh,
agree with that, because otherwise it would just be easy to be dismissed,
yes.
or, well, really, that's the big thing. Just, pushed aside, dismissed,
Yeah.
rolled over, bowled over.
Yeah.
But to own it, um, is a very helpful, necessary first step.
Yeah. Yeah. I was quite pleased that that was top of my list.
Yeah, well done. A plus, gold star.
Right. Okay. That's it now. Let's end now. Wow.
Okay, we've done. Well, y'all
Yeah.
have a great day.
Yeah. Okay. Right. No, I joke. Okay. So next, what I probably could have done is put them in a better order. But I think let's go with one of your points, actually, which was about expressing ourselves.
Hmm.
So would you like to explain that a little bit more, what you meant about that?
I don't remember what I meant about that.
So that
What did I mean about that?
was about, I think, two postmenopausal women here trying to remember what they talked about 10 minutes ago. Learning to express ourselves. It's sort of on
Now
the
I know.
back
I remember what I meant.
in
Yeah.
it. Right. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what I was saying to you is, as I was thinking about this topic, I remembered early on mostly in like love relationships is when this came to mind, how hard it was for me to express a thought or a feeling or an idea. Like it was just hard because I was geared toward, what does this other person want? What does this other person need? What do they believe? What do they think? And I was very focused that way. I specifically remember a conversation in college with the person I was dating, and we were sitting there in silence as they were waiting for me to answer something. And I was just like mustering the courage to say words that would express how I felt. And I thought, I mean, I look back at that now. My wife today would probably welcome me not just kidding,
Not being able to
but
express
not
yourself
very
quite
much,
so well.
just kidding. But I've come a lot. I say that because I've come so far in that now. Now I can express what is true for me, but I didn't start off that way. And I know I'm not alone with that.
Oh gosh,
In
you're
being a
definitely
sensitive person. Yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely not alone. And I think, you know, a lot of non-sensitive people would find it hard to you know, we all do, we all, especially when we're younger, find it hard to express what we're really feeling and what we really mean, and be honest and true to ourselves. But I do wonder, actually, as high sensitive people, whether actually that's a little bit harder because we have such big feelings, and because we're processing them so deeply that
Yes.
that they are bigger, and it seems like a bigger thing. And also we may well have not have grown up feeling like we have to sort of keep them in and not express them. So
Absolutely.
and that then becomes tricky when we're in, as adults, when we're in relationships with other people, where actually we need to be able to express our true self. So on one hand, that's what we really desire and what would be really great in the relationship, but on the other hand, it feels so hard because we've grown up shutting them away.
Yes.
For all the reasons that you know us highly sensitive people do end up having to shut them away. And you know, I know it's not easy to move from that being shut away to the opening place, but really to thrive and for your relationship to thrive, there does, I believe, need to be that opening up, or however else you might describe it, to be able to bring your true self into the relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, and what a different experience to be able to bring your true self to somebody and have that be loved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if anybody's listening to this and they're a lot younger than I am, I implore you, if you possibly can, to do this sooner rather than later, because otherwise you're like me and you've been married for 15 years before you embark on this, and then you have to bring a whole different you to the 15-year-old marriage, which can be a little bit discombobulating for everybody involved.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to, we probably, well, we will now, because I've said it, we will now touch on that a little bit in a few moments, really, about what that can be like in a relationship. But yeah, that point was about trying to express ourselves, our true self, whilst also acknowledging that it's not always easy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the next point following on from that expressing ourselves is, you know, once we've learned to do that, and like we talked about last week in self-care, is about knowing what you need and learning to advocate for yourself in the relationship.
Yes.
And I think now we can really start getting into the how we can be in relationship with others.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. This is, I remember early on in my relationship with my now spouse, she is extroverted and I am so far on the introverted scale. Like, we're just night and day difference there. And so even before I knew I was HSP, her way in the world and what she needed from the world, she needed to process things externally. She liked to have a lot of movement and life and people around her. And I was like, I need quiet and I need aloneness. And before I learned how to advocate for myself, I would make her, well, a couple things would happen. One, I would just go along and do what she wanted because I wanted her to have what she wanted.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I would just be overwhelmed and exhausted a lot. And so then that would make me angry. And so then I would start making her wrong. Well, why do you need to do this? When really, what the situation needed and what we're now able to do now, 15 years later, is I can say, hey, I need some cave time. And she's like, yeah, got it, no problem. I'm going to go hang out with so and so. Brilliant. Problem solved. We're both able to then just say what we need. Nobody has to be wrong. We
Yes.
can need different things, and those are both great, right?
Yeah, I love that. And that's so well put. That actually nobody needs to be wrong. It, and you've touched on a very something very close to my heart there, which is, people pleasing, because
Oh,
we
yeah.
because we feel, because we have a lot of empathy, and we tend to know what the other person is feeling and want.
Yep.
We can really very easily, you've done it, I've done it, slip
Yes.
into that, letting the other person, you know have what they want.
Yes.
Sometimes it's easier, well, a lot of the time it's easier, but also because we want them to have what they want,
Yes.
but it takes us a while to understand that that is going against what we need or want,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's pulling something back for ourselves, isn't it?
100%. I'm
Yeah.
so glad you brought up people pleasing. That was so much a part of most of my relationships until, I really worked a lot on it in therapy, and it still pops up. I mean, it's still there. But my habit in the world would be exactly what you said. Like, what does the other person need? I want them to have what they want. And those are lovely things. When it becomes unhealthy is when we don't first check in and say, what do I need in this situation? And honor that, right?
Yeah.
Honor, what do I need here? Okay, you need something different. Great. Well, we're two adults. We can figure that out together. Instead of just the knee jerk, well, let me just acquiesce to what you need. Let me make you happy. I don't want to sit. First of all, I don't want you to be unhappy. I don't want to sit in your unhappiness. I don't want to be the cause of your unhappiness, right? These are the types of things I would say, and just be like, well, it'll just be easier to let her have what she wants. But it's not healthy. Like, it comes at a cost, a personal
It
cost.
it does, and I did exactly the same thing. And there does then become this underlying frustration and irritation and anger, really. And that's certainly what
Oh
I
yeah.
found, and mine
Oh
all
yeah.
bubbled up in the end. Um, and like my husband likes noise around. He's definitely much more extroverted than I'm not quite as introverted as you are, but I'm definitely more of an introvert than an extrovert. And he'll always have the telly on in the background, or some music, or on a quiet Sunday morning, I'm like, oh, the kids are still in their rooms, it's all nice and quiet, and then
Yeah.
he's got music on, and I'm like, ah. So I do like a lot of quiet and
Yes.
alone time, and
Yes.
I am still having to learn that I need that and to take it. So I know that
Yeah.
I've learned that I need it. What I'm still learning is to get enough of it so that I don't end up going down that depleted,
Yeah.
overloaded, then overwhelmed road. I still travel down that road before I can pull myself back. And
Yeah. Me
it,
too.
it might never change. I might always, that this might be as good as it gets, but I'm aware now.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I definitely don't get enough alone time. Good, like not alone time where I'm at home working on my own and trying to get work
Right.
done, but proper
Right.
alone time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely my challenge, to build in more of that. And it's really important. And I know I'm a better partner in our relationship when I
Yes.
get that.
That is such the key right there,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Where, my old way of thinking was, well, I'm being a good partner by just letting her have what makes her happy. But because I wasn't taking care of myself, then I started the things I'm depleted and I'm resentful now and I'm angry. That is not me being the best partner.
yeah.
Me taking care of me and making space for her, that's a whole different ballgame. That's a different thing.
Yeah, and actually, as you just said that, I don't know why I haven't thought this before, but actually, if we can take care of ourselves, they don't need to. We're okay.
Right.
We're
That's right.
actually taking any burden, for want of a better word, that they might feel about in our relationship. They need to look after us. Well,
Yes.
it's okay. I've actually got that. If you can be open to me getting what I need, then
Hmm.
I've looked after myself. That
That's
that's
right.
fine. So you don't need. And I actually say to my husband and my two boys a lot now, what do you need? And I go, I need this. Okay.
Nice.
So that when I say
Nice.
I need this, I know I've been asking them, not at the same time, it's not like contrived, I need this, so what do you need? And then we're all happy. But if it's a constant sort of dialogue about who needs what,
Yep.
and I mean need, not just want, especially
Yes.
teenagers. I don't go around asking them what they want all the time, because that will be an endless list. But what do you need?
Yeah.
So, if I can tell that one of my boys is fed up about something, I'll say, do you need anything from me right now, or do you need to be on your own? But I'm here. Do you need a
Yeah.
hug? Do you need, what do you need? Um,
Yes.
and I say the same to my husband. It's a little bit of a challenge for him to own what he needs, but we're kind of getting there. We're all learning this together.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it hadn't really dawned on me until you said that. This little light went off in my head, that actually it's a good thing that we're looking after ourselves, because
Yes.
we are responsible. We're, each one of us are all responsible for
Yes.
ourselves, aren't we?
Yes.
So if we all looked after our own needs,
Uh-huh.
of course we're all part of you know wider society and our families and
Yeah.
everything else, but basically if we made sure that we are okay,
Yeah.
that would be a better place for us all to be living, wouldn't it?
I totally agree. It's like the
Mm,
responsibility of caring for myself lies with me. I may, because we're in partnership and we're in communities, I will reach out for help when I need it, but that's also me being responsible for myself instead of saying, well, you're responsible for me, for taking care of me. You're responsible for meeting my needs. Like that's a parent-child relationship.
yeah,
Like, you know.
it's not an
So I love what
adult
you're saying.
adult, yeah. And actually you've just said another really great thing there, and it's literally just gone out of my head. um oh gosh, what did you just say? Oh, it was so good. um right, we'll come back to that in a moment.
Okay. But I did think of something else, right? When you were talking too, we're talking about, asking like, what do you need? What do you need? And you saying, here's what I need. It reminded me of a story that Brene Brown talks about when like her son had a game, I think, and she had been traveling and she really just needed to go be home and rest. And she told her son, I think she wasn't going to go. And, she had the whole mom thing, like, I'm being a bad mom. I should be doing that. But then I think when he was making his Christmas list, he asked for alone time. And he said, I didn't realize I could ask for that
Yeah,
until you did that. And that's just always stuck with me, that it's like, as we take care of ourselves, as we do the things we need, we give permission to the people around us to do the exact same thing and take care of themselves. And I have seen that my wife now asks for more things. She will say, I need to go do this. Got it. And it's like it's honestly so much easier than trying to figure out what the other one needs. I mean, as HSPs, we're probably pretty freaking good at it but also we don't always get it right. And then the burden is on us, right? To like, I've got to figure out what your need is and try to meet it versus what we were talking about, just two adults saying what they need, taking what they need. It's
Yeah.
just a lot easier. It
Yeah.
just is. Not that we have it all figured out, but that's what we're working on.
You're so right, because none of us are mind readers.
No.
No, and I've remembered a few. What you were saying just made me think about, asking for support or asking for help. So as we take responsibility for ourselves, for our needs, and for ourselves, we also do need to be able to ask for help, because we're not, no man is an island, no person is an island, and I have been fiercely independent a lot of my life, and I didn't have people who were there for me when I was younger. So it has been hard for me to learn to ask for help.
Yeah.
But I have found that has come easier when I have owned my needs. I wouldn't say it's really easy asking for help.
Right. Right.
It has become easier, and it's a practice. It's like any of these things we're talking about. Actually, right. It is a practice, and it's really clunky and really uncomfortable the first time we do it. But the more we do it, the easier it gets.
Absolutely. I love that you brought up that it's clunky at first, and it's vulnerable to really say these things. It's so vulnerable. I mean, I remember, just saying to my wife, I feel really uncomfortable saying this. I feel guilty asking for or saying what I need. But and actually, I think honestly, I did start by asking, be like, I really need some alone time. Is that okay? I mean, I think that's how it started. And now I'm just like, well, I need to ask your permission. I'm a grown woman. But so now it's more like, hey, I need some alone time. But at first I remember saying, like, this feels weird. I feel guilty. I know that you want to do this, but I don't want to do this. And it feels weird to say that to you because I want you to have what you want, but also I just really don't want that. Yes. And she'll be like, okay, well, let's figure it out. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Let's figure it out. And she'll have days like that too, where she's feeling really vulnerable, and she'll be like, I have had a hard time at work, and I just really need some alone time, but I don't want to hurt your feelings. We haven't seen much of each other this week. And I'm just like, you go take care of you first, because then I get the better you. So that's fine. Like, go do what you need. Go do what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is uncomfortable, but does get better. And it does really make, in my experience, it's made our relationship a lot better. Well, I would say that. I was sure my husband would agree. Actually, I'm much nicer to be around now that I feel more able to be myself.
Yes.
And get what I need. And like you absolutely said, that the more we do it, the more, and we model it for everybody else, other people around us, it's like they get permission to do it as well.
100%.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And actually, as we're talking about it being a bit clunky and a bit uncomfortable, I would say that any of these practices, that when you start putting them in place, they need to come with a really good dose of self-compassion.
Yes,
because it takes practice, and it will feel a bit awkward, and maybe you're not going to get it right all the time. Not that there's a right or wrong, but it might not go brilliantly. And actually just, a big, massive dose of self-compassion and self-love, and know that you're doing it not just for the good of yourself, but for the good of your relationships.
Yes. Perfectly said. Yes.
and just be really kind to yourself that you're trying to do things differently. You're trying to improve things for everybody.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it's quite easy to think, well, that didn't go well, I'm not going to do it. It's obviously, I obviously I can't do this, or it's not worth it, or, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think, what did you say in the self-care episode? It's possible, it's doable, it's worth it. That's what you said.
Oh, I'm being quoted. How exciting.
It's possible, it's doable, it's worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did I cut you off? You were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say that it's also possible, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, how as we shift, it can shift things in our relationship. It is possible that the person on the receiving end doesn't receive it well at first, right? Because they're used to interacting with us in a different way. And now suddenly we're like, I don't want to do that anymore. So that's also normal, right? That can happen. It doesn't mean you've done something wrong. It means that you're having to renegotiate what that relationship looks like. And that can be clunky.
It can.
And you might require some outside help for that,
Yeah, you might require some outside help. And, and also, if you're the one instigating it, you've been thinking about it for a little while, and you might not have been communicating that to whoever, the other person in this relationship. And, it's a bit of a surprise to them, or really new. And, they might think everything's fine. And you're saying, oh, well, things need to change. So, just, slowly, I'd say, step by step, little bit at a time, maybe, if that feels right. I mean, jump straight in and throw it all up in the air and see how it lands. I mean, go for it. But I would say don't expect it to change overnight, because that certainly wasn't my experience. It just comes in time if you're both up for it. And I have had quite a few conversations with my husband along the line of, are we in it? Are we in this together? Because if we're not, then we have to talk about that as well. Because mainly because after my 3 years of therapy, I was different. I changed, and I knew there was no going back. So there was all that to contend with. Then the high sensitivity sort of came after that. But so it was like, oh God, right, something else now and something else. But we have weathered that, and I would say our relationship is in a much better place. Because, to be fair, we were not in a great place before I went to therapy. So it's definitely worth it. We've still got work to do, but also a relationship that doesn't change and grow is not the sort of relationship that I want anyway.
Yeah, same for me too.
Some people might not be up for that, and that's fine. But certainly for me, I needed it to grow with me, and luckily my husband came along with it. So just for people to know that if it does feel a little bit what's the word, destabilizing, maybe, know that is absolutely normal, and that doesn't mean it's all going to fall apart.
Right.
Just go steady.
Yeah. And I do recommend getting outside help if counseling is something you both could do together. Sometimes navigating these waters is challenging. Yes. And sometimes relationships don't survive. That's also a reality. Like, as one person grows and the other person doesn't want to, or one person grows and says, this really has not been working for me, and I'm not interested in doing it anymore with you. And, all of these things are possibilities, and are you are always at choice, right?
Yeah.
All of these are absolutely, you choose what is the best thing for you, for sure.
That's right. And the same, with friendships, friendships might fall by the wayside as you're going through some of this. And, not all friendships are forever. Some are, what they say, some are for a season, some are for when you're just in a certain place. Some of them are just when you're at work. Friendships don't always last. Changes. And that is perfectly okay and perfectly normal. I found the greatest joy, one of the greatest joys for me, since I turned 50 was how many new friends I've made. And that is because of what has happened in my life and the changes that have come about. And I've ended up meeting loads of new people and made some wonderful friends. You being one of them, Robbie. You know, and that has all happened, you know, since I turned 50, when some people say, oh, I have heard people say, oh, you don't make new friends as you get older, do you? And I'm like, well, I don't know. That's not my experience anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not mine either. Yeah.
No. And, you know, family, like birth family, families of origin, we don't get to choose them.
Right.
And, you know, it might rock the boat a little bit with them. And, you know, you have to, you know, you will need to navigate your way through that. And that is another time that you might need some outside help with that. I certainly did. And, you know, yeah. But again, it's doable and it's absolutely worth it. I would not be here doing this now if I had not had all that help and done all that work. And I absolutely, I'm so glad I'm here, not back where I was before. So,
oh my gosh, same. I was miserable.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
Yeah. I don't want to.
No.
No.
No, me neither. Me neither. Yeah. I've got a couple of things left on here. One massive one actually. Okay, let's get that one out. Boundaries.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Woo!
I think we might touch on boundaries now, but I actually think boundaries could do with being a whole episode.
I think so.
But some of the things that we've touched on already about, you know, knowing what we need and advocating for what we need and making sure we get what we need. Okay. So putting ourselves first is really what boundaries is all about.
That's right.
You know, and it's all about who are you letting in and who aren't you letting in, and how far are you letting certain people in. It's not as hard, I think, as some people might think it is, and yet it is quite hard sometimes. You know, it's not about deciding, right, you, I don't want anything more to do with you anymore. Right, and right. you over there, you get everything. You know, it's not like who's in and who's out sort of thing. Who's allowed in past the bound, but you know, if you think of it as like as a physical sort of boundary, who is allowed in into your space this side of the boundary and who has to stay out there, it's not really as black and white as that. Yeah. But for me, the easiest way to think about boundaries is, how do I make sure that I'm getting what I need? Yes. Actually. That's exactly right. What do I need to put in place to make sure that happens? So whether that's space in my calendar, or get somebody else to do the shopping, or get somebody else to do the cooking, or to oh gosh, you know, there are so many different ways we can look at boundaries. So I don't, if there's something you want to add now, Robbie, please do. And then I think actually we should do a big episode all on boundaries. Do you think?
I love the idea of doing an episode. Yes, I do want to add this into the space today, which is no, being able to say no, like that at times is still hard for me. And that was one of the hardest things, because it tied so deeply to my people pleasing, not wanting to hurt anybody's feelings or let them down. Yeah. And yeah, so that was a really big one for me, but just learning that's sometimes having to say, I lost a friendship over having to say no to someone. So, I mean, there can be costs, but also I have found myself, which is, I need that. I need that. So
yeah, that's an essential, not a luxury, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. That's right. And no is an absolute sentence. It's an entire sentence, all on its own. And, you know, that is about saying no to the things you don't want or need, so that you have more space, time, energy, money, all your resources available for the things that you do want and need and light you up and are good
Yes,
for you and all those things. So
that's right.
that's what it's all about. So in a lot of ways, it's actually quite straightforward. I wouldn't say simple, but straightforward.
Not, it can feel very not simple, but yes,
Yeah,
it is straightforward.
yeah, yeah. So I'm
So more on boundaries in the future.
yeah, and boundaries really do help.
Oh gosh,
They
yes.
do help, and that's why we're sort of saying here in this episode, we're just mentioning boundaries because they do really help navigating your relationships with anybody, be it a non-HSP or another HSP, or you know, um, they they do help, and they're not selfish. And if people don't like the boundaries that you put in place, it's always a good idea to wonder why they don't like you putting a boundary in place, because usually it's because they're benefiting from you not having a boundary.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
harsh, but true.
And
Most of
remember, it's not your job to meet their needs. It's your job to meet your own.
exactly. I love it. It just all ties in, doesn't it? It does.
Yep.
Um, okay, so we I've got here on the list, seek out other HSPs, which is, again, we talked about that in the self-care episode. But the reason for seeking out other HSPs in order to help you navigate your relationship with a non-HSP is that you can get your HSP fix. You can have your space with other HSPs where you can like nurture your sensitive side and be understood and not have to explain yourself, which leaves you nurtured and your cup full to take to your relationship with whoever the non-HSP is in your life.
Yeah.
So that's why spending time with other HSPs really benefits your relationship with a non-HSP.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's beautifully said. Yeah.
We've talked about that. What I'm reading my list. You don't know what I'm saying about that. Slowing down, self-compassion. So one I had on here was choose who gets your energy, which again is really a boundary. It ties in with the boundary, I think. But I really love that idea. It almost kind of doesn't fit in really, but I just love that idea. So I wanted to say it, that really choose who gets your energy, because your energy, like all other resources, is not infinite. Um, and as highly sensitive people, we do need to really keep a check on our energy levels and make sure we're keeping it topped up. Don't wait until it's nearly gone before you start filling it up. Keep it full. It's that whole
Yes.
cup and saucer analogy, isn't it? That keep your cup full and only give from what has gone into the saucer. If there's nothing in the saucer, then get your cup filled up, because if you're waiting for it to be drained, you've got very little to give to yourself to help keep filling that cup up. Just try to constantly look after yourself.
Yes. I
Instantly.
just recently relearned that again. And here I was like feeling so good about all my self-care stuff.
Yeah.
But I was entering kind of the Christmas season feeling like, okay, I'm ready for a break. Like I'm taking some time off. I'm ready to recharge. I'm so excited about this. And then my wife had an accident and she's fine now. But that took a lot of me to be there and I didn't get the break I needed. And so then I was in trouble. And I was like, I should not have let it get so low when I did have control over that, because then when something happened I didn't have control over, I didn't have my resources. So it was just another reminder. It's like, don't let it get so low. Exactly what you said. Don't let it get so low. You got to top it off sooner, top it off sooner. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, you don't know what's around the corner. You might think, oh, okay, I know I'm really low, but I'll just get to the end of next week or something. But, can you do something? Can you,
Now.
what can you possibly fit in now to make sure by the time you get to the end of next week, you're not absolutely on zero?
That's right. That's
Because you don't know
exactly
what's
right.
going to happen. Yeah. I've got one more thing on my list, but I just going back to the sort of title of today was navigating relationships with non-HSPs. I'm not, do you know what? I'm not sure I've ever been in a relationship with an HSP, actually. I mean, I do have some HSP friends now, don't get me wrong. Of course,
Like a romantic relationship, you mean?
yeah,
Or
and
yeah,
I don't think any of my I don't know any of my immediate my family of origin are HSPs. I think my mum might have been, but that might have been what drove her to drink. So, but for me, these are what we've been talking about are really how to have relationships with anybody, really,
yeah.
aren't they? I'm just wondering, is there a difference between a non-HSP and an HSP? I mean, I'm sure there is, but I'm not sure I can talk about that from personal experience. Although I do know that you and I have struck up a really deep, strong friendship really quickly. And I think
Very.
that's what can happen when you are HSPs and you're aligned and you just sort of get each other.
It's just, I was literally going to say get each other. Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, I said earlier before we started recording, it's like we're the same people, but either side of the Atlantic. We both have the
Yeah.
same ideas and almost say the same things sometimes.
Yeah.
So really, these are just navigating relationships full stop. But I do sometimes, I must be really irritating to my husband because well, I'm sure I am, but he'll say I'll say, oh, is everything all right, and he'll say, yeah, everything's fine, and I'm like, I know it's not.
Right.
And
Yes.
it's not, is it? And he goes, yeah, it's fine. I say it's not. And now, I mean, depends on how much patience I'm feeling like I've got, but I will say, well, we can either play this game and eventually you'll tell me, or you can just tell me now. Why don't you just tell me now? Because it would just be
Yeah.
much easier. And sometimes he plays the game with me and will tell me, and sometimes he won't, and it comes out eventually. And then, but I said to him, I said, it must be really annoying when you want to try and keep something to yourself. Or I mean, it's not like I'm prying. It's not like he says, yes, there is something, but I don't want to tell you. Then that would be, I'd be fine. I'd be
Yes.
really intrigued, but I'd be fine.
Yes.
But and in a way, I'm doing it out of love. I am doing it from a pure place of love because I want him to be able to express what it is that's bothering him, and
Yeah.
get it out. And problem shared is a problem halved, and maybe I can help, maybe I can't, maybe just telling me would help.
Yeah.
So I think from an HSP, non-HSP sort of point of view, that must be great on one hand, but mainly annoying.
Yes. Yes. I think you raise a really good point. Um, uh, that has certainly come up between my spouse and myself. She'll just be like, I just don't want to. And I'm like, got it. Don't want to is a fine answer. But when you're trying to tell me everything's fine and I can see that it isn't, then I'm going to keep asking about it. Really? It's fine. But it's not.
Yeah.
And now sometimes I'll be like, is it not, but you don't want to talk about it? She'll be like, yes. Okay, got it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I shared with you before too, like coaching is just something I've naturally done for most of my life. Didn't realize I was doing that.
Yep.
And
So
so in the category of things that could be really annoying to your partner, um, starting to coach them at whim with whatever is, they bring to the table uh, can be very annoying. And but again, it came from a place of love. I wanted to help. Oh, let me help you, like with these natural skills I have, blah 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 blah. And my wife jokes now. She's like, I've gotten thousands of hours of free coaching. Um, but now that I'm aware of what I'm doing, I will ask her, are you wanting wife Robin to answer that or coach Robin to answer that? Because it's really not fair to her for me to just go into coaching mode. Like we're not in a coaching relationship. We haven't, you know, Philippa
Yeah, well,
disagrees.
I
I
shared
want
with
to
you
hear
what
it.
I thought about that.
I
That I
want to
think,
hear it.
well, isn't it implicit? You know, you're married to me, so you know, isn't that an implicit contractual arrangement there that you know, yes, you agree to be coached. I'm kind of I joke really, but I think I could probably do with bearing that in mind. I'm really good with my friends now. Now I realize that's what happened. I say, do you want friend Philippa or coach Philippa answer?
Yeah.
Usually they want both, but
Both. Yep.
you know, I'm very careful about where I go with those things, and I do find that people just start telling me their life story without
Oh
much
my gosh.
yeah, I've had that
Without
happen
any
twice
prompting. Yes.
this week. You know, so I'm very good at listening and listening to, you know, respond and really try and understand what they're saying and respond. But I absolutely have to hold back that natural coach in me, like you say, because that's not really what's going on, and we're not in a contract, you know, in a coaching relationship. So so many of us HSPs do have that natural tendency.
Yeah.
We certainly can be the go-to for our friends, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the listening ear.
Yep.
And you know, a lot of the time people just want to be heard and don't want fixing, don't want coaching. And if, like us, like we've said, we've both done that in the past, and you know, you sound like you're doing a lot better. I'm a lot better with my friends. I still think I've got a long way to go with my husband to not fall into that role. But
Well, to be fair, it's hardest with the ones closest to us, right? Like we
well, because we
just
know them, and also we can see
we're
how much
also
better our,
impacted
well,
by
we
them.
can see how much better our relationship would be if they just, like, you know, accept this coaching. No, so because coaching is not about giving answers. So which is really, you know, and that's actually what a lot of people don't always get. Coaching is not about telling the clients what to do. It's helping the client see what the answer is for them.
Yes.
It's really just, you know, being there with them while they muddle through it all and get their own answers. So I don't have an agenda when I'm trying to coach my husband. I'm trying to help him work it out for himself.
Yeah.
I'm supporting him. I'm with him by his side as he sorts it out for himself. But yeah, even then, I just need to butt out of it a lot of the time.
I think, yeah. I think for me, when I was really honest with myself, I discovered I did have an agenda, because when I sit with coaching clients, my agenda is their agenda. My agenda is helping them to discover for themselves what they want. And I have no attachment to whatever that is.
Yes.
None. But with my with my wife, what I found was I had an attachment to her doing that work. Like, I'm just like, but don't you want to discover that about yourself? And don't you want to dig into like, so but that's for her to decide. That's,
okay, so maybe I did have a bit of an agenda. But I did want them to dig into things, but I didn't know what he would find. I didn't have an agenda about what he would find when he dug in, if that makes sense.
I do.
It's more of a curiosity actually than anything else. I'm like, well, what is going on under there? What, you know, what is happening? Where is that coming from? Childhood obviously is always the answer, but you know, yeah.
And again, I mean, the people closest to us, it's the hardest because we love them. We want the best for them. So it's like we're going to naturally try to do our gifts with them. Plus, we are impacted by them. We're sharing a life together. So it's a bunch of things.
It is. And, you know, it's all interwoven, isn't it? So it's, you know, if we could very neatly put it all in boxes and separate it all out, well, you know, but that just doesn't happen, does it?
Nope, it doesn't.
So you brilliantly brought up the last point that I had on my list. So I think that's it for this episode, unless you have anything that you were thinking that we haven't talked about.
I mean, I'm sure there's loads we haven't talked about. So I'd love to hear from the listeners. What resonated with you about what we said? What did you
do you have any
something
questions?
you learned?
Yeah.
Any questions? And What did we leave off?
What did we leave off? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. As I say, Robbie said, let us know what we've missed off if you can think of anything else. And thanks for listening and watching if you're watching on YouTube. And we'll be back soon with another episode. So it's bye from me.
And bye from me.
Thank you for listening to the Meeting of Minds podcast. You can find this podcast in all the usual places. Please tell your friends, please subscribe, and if you have a moment, I'd be really grateful if you could rate and review, as it helps other people find us and helps me spread the messages of empowerment and positivity that I'm really passionate about. If you want to find out more about me, you can visit my website, www.safeandsupported.co.uk. Until next time, bye.